Lisa joined our membership actually early on during the pandemic. So we want to thank her for reaching out to us. She lives in Ellicott City, Maryland, and she started making mosaics in 2018. And when she started, she was immediately hooked. Having worked in traditional stained glass, she enjoyed the freedom of mosaics that it provides. Lisa enjoys a variety of material, including stained glass, smalty, slate, broken dishes, and found objects. Formerly a lawyer and undergraduate legal studies professor, she retired at the end of 2019 and was awarded a year-long emerging artist residency at the Howard County Center for the Arts in 2020 and is now a full-time resident artist. The annual resident visual arts exhibit, where she is discussing today, which she'll be discussing today, will be on display in Ellicott City from April 16th through May 28th. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us. We're so happy to see you.
Good. Thanks so much for inviting me, Alyssa, and it's so nice to be here. I am used to talking to my classes when I was teaching in courts and, in cases and stuff, but I've never talked about my art like I am today. So I'm really excited. You guys are my guinea pigs. So please give me any suggestions later after, or put in the chat or whatever. So today I'm going to talk about a project I came up with a year ago. Just over a year ago, to do a community sourced project to celebrate my town's 250th anniversary. My inspiration came from going to the virtual SAMA conference last year when I heard, I'm sure were any of you there watching? We heard Julie Sperling talk about her piece, and I have a picture there in my slideshow of communion. And until then, I didn't even know, of course, what I didn't know, because I'm so new to mosaics, unlike Jonathan, who has this wonderful long history, and I'm sure many of you do. I'm still relatively new. And I don't have a formal art background. So I'm just taking in as much as I can all the time as a perpetual student. So Julie's talk about her piece, Communion, was super inspiring, both in telling me that you could ask the community to send in things to put in a mosaic, to hear their stories about what they're sending in, and also to create this beautiful work of art that has these pieces immersed in it where you don't even notice them until you really look at it. And then I was also inspired by some other speakers in the SAMA conference. Elizabeth Raby talked about a community project. She had people come into her studio and create mosaics as a form of healing from the wildfires that were in California. And then I believe Jennifer McGuire was her name, who went to a veterans community center and had the women create a beautiful piece that went up on the wall inside that organization. So I got super inspired and said, I want to do something for my town. I don't know if you heard, you guys are all close enough, that Ellicott City suffered the first of a 100-year flood in 2016. And our historic Main Street, which you can see an aerial view in the picture that's on the slide, was completely wiped out. Floodwaters just eviscerated most of the stores and restaurants at the lower part of the town. And then 2 years later, just short of 2 years later, 2 years and 2 months later, the second 100-year flood happened. So last year was the 5th anniversary of that. And that's what I thought, well, I need to do something to commemorate that. And then in trying to formulate an idea, I found out that the town's 250th anniversary was this year in 2022. So I went, oh, that's it. And I started bouncing ideas off of friends and people who are familiar with the historic part of the town, and came up with a plan for this year's resident artist show, because I'm in the Howard County Center for the Arts, which is the county where Ellicott City is. As a resident artist here, there are 12 of us, and we do a visual art show every year in our big gallery. We're in a, you can see part of my studio, but we're in an old elementary school, and I have a third of a classroom. So it's a beautiful, bright space. And the cafeteria, I think is our gallery, our main gallery. So each artist has a portion of that to create whatever we want and show it off during the year. So I thought, okay, I can't take the time to figure out where this project would end up. So I'm going to use this as my project to show and then figure it out later. So I started by asking for contributions from the community. I have a wonderful friend whose marketing company is right on Main Street, her office in Ellicott City. So I bounced the ideas off of her. She's been there for 25 years or more. So she's super familiar with all the history, and she created this visual for me. The first two pictures you see are a PDF that I created explaining my project, asking anybody who is familiar with Ellicott City, lived here, worked here, even just visited, to send me something. And I gave, in the second page of it, some parameters. And I followed Julie Sperling pretty closely. I even asked her and said, hey, do you mind if I do this? She's like, no, go for it. To send me something that is smaller than your hand, that can be manipulated, that's non-perishable, permanent, because I didn't know if this project was going to end up outside somewhere. I wanted it to be durable. So I sent out on social media. My friend created the third picture. On the right is a card. I had so many. She did all this for free for me, God bless her. And then I just ordered these on Vistaprint. They're like brochures, you know, tabletop cards. And I put a QR code that went to my website with this more detailed PDF on it asking for the contributions. And I went door to door, downtown on Main Street, leaving those cards. I plastered on social media. I sent out emails. I put them in people's mailboxes because there are homes in the historic area as well. And just tried to get the word out as much as I could. So I started the idea in February, started creating the flyer in March. There's an organization called the EC250.org, which is the nonprofit organization that is supporting all of the activities throughout the year in honor of the 250th anniversary. So I contacted them. They gave me their support and blessing, and that's their logo on the bottom of the brochure and allowed me to put it on there. They've also pushed out the information so I could gather more contributions from the community. So on this slide are some of the things that I received. And I asked everyone who sent me pieces to put in the mosaic to also send a story, whether that was a line or a whole page. Some of the stories that I received were super touching. You can see down in the bottom right, this little figurine that I've used in a lot of my pictures. So touching and heartwarming. A woman whose son committed suicide at 27. She would walk along, there's a river at the bottom of Main Street called the Patapsco River, and she would walk along the river and gather debris as her form of healing. And that has a prominent place in one of the pieces. And then you can see some of the notes and some of the other trinkets that people sent in. So I got things from costume jewelry and little ceramic trinkets, to bits of plates, marbles, glass. This is a doorknob, broken pitchers, metal objects, you name it, I got it. So as things started coming in, I gathered them all in, I should go back one. I gathered them all and put them in a bin, and I tried to put the date. I would put them in a bag and left them because I gathered from middle of June, and my deadline initially was October 1st. But by the time word started spreading, that's when the media caught on. And the Baltimore Sun is we're about 15 minutes outside west of Baltimore, and the Baltimore Sun is the biggest in this region, and they do the Howard County Times, which is our local newspaper. They caught wind of it and did a front page story on me, which is hanging up there. It was amazing coverage. And so once that was printed, I started getting more contributions. In all, I got over 80 contributions, and some people sent multiple items. So once I reached my deadline finally November 15th, because I got busy for the holiday season coming up, and I couldn't do anything with it anyway at that point. So I figured I'll just keep collecting. And then I had a wonderful volunteer who came in and helped me catalog everything, which is the numbers you can see. So I put a number on everything, took a picture of the note, the object by itself, put it all in a binder in clear covers, report covers. And in the end, I've assembled all of these pictures of the items with the story below it in PDF form. And I kept it anonymous, so I'll have a separate list of everyone's story in the end. But the PDF will go on my website. I would like to have had a printed copy, but our art center, as of last Saturday, finally said no more masks, but they don't want people touching things. So I can't have a printed version of all the stories. I'm just gonna have a QR code where people can then go to my website and see all the stories. So after April 16th, if you want to visit that, you can as well. So I cataloged everything. Photos, had to edit again over 80 pages. So it's really interesting and heartwarming. So then I had to figure out, what am I going to do? Now that I've received all these things and people have entrusted me with their stuff and their stories, what am I actually going to make? So in my mind, I wanted to create something that was like the map you see on the right, kind of like a theme park map, not to scale, but highlighted certain things in our town. The map on the left is the downtown old Ellicott City Main Street area. You can see the river on the right. And then the map on the right shows some iconic buildings in the town. So those were the images I had in mind. So I walked around town, I took pictures, but I also scoured the internet for what pictures came up. And the pictures on the graph paper, or excuse me, are the ones that spoke to me. So there are 6 parts to my project. The one on the far right is the river, and at the bottom of the river are the silos of an old flour mill, which sits at the base of our town. And then moving left, the B&O Railroad Museum. It's the oldest railroad museum in the country, or oldest railroad in the country. The Ellicott City iconic clock was lost after the first flood, recovered, and then lost for good after the second flood. And then I'll talk about the other images. So I took these pictures, I reduced them on my computer. Actually, I printed them out, reduced them, printed them out, and then I hand cut them, put them on graph paper because I'm such a visual and I need to touch, like most of us probably are, most of you are as well. And my parameters for the resident artist show is 90 linear inches. So I had to make my project fit within that. So that's why I had the graph paper, and I kind of expanded and reduced, and on my computer, I outlined with my mouse each of the images and changed the sizing and put the graph in a Word document so that I knew my sizes. Then I enlarged them on paper, just by hand calculations. And the picture on the right shows my cutouts that I made in paper. And you can see, hopefully, get rid of my gallery. There we go. You can see the tape measure, and that's 90 inches going across. So I cut out my paper patterns, and then I traced them onto Wheatie board. And I bought the Wheatie from a tile store in Columbia, Maryland. And if you have a sales tax and use license, I don't know how Pennsylvania is, but in Maryland, I don't have to pay sales tax, and I got the wholesale like contractor discount. So one sheet of Wheatie board, 3x5, I think, was $45. So really good price. Got 2 of those outlined, kind of fitted together, cut them out with the handsaw. Then on the right, I put the tape, the mesh tape around the edges. I used Laticrete 254 Platinum with Raven tint and mixed it up and put it around the edges of each of the pieces. And then this was probably November, December, I cataloged everything. And then in between Christmas and New Year's, I laid everything out in my studio. I have a wonderful large table and this great cart. I laid everything out and I organized it by color. And some of the pieces I knew had to go in certain of the parts of my project, like the little figurine I was talking about earlier. I knew that was going to go in my river. So I laid everything out so I could see it, and then started thinking about the design of each of the pieces. This picture up here on the left is each of my prepared substrates with the Wheatie washers through them. Because this project is going up in the gallery temporarily, I have Wheatie washers and D-rings and wire on the back of each one of them. And because they're kind of weird, unique shapes, and I knew this river was going to be heavy, I put 2 sets just to take the pressure off the walls, because in our gallery, they actually use screws instead of a hanging system. So I didn't use this many, as it turned out in the end, but you can see it laying out. Those are the actual substrates. I started laying out some of the pieces right on the Wheatie board, and then I went, oh, I can't do that. I laid out the paper pattern, put all the pieces on that, and then worked side by side. But first, I drew each piece out, and because time was running short, this is probably the beginning of January now, I took one piece at a time. And I started on the left with the river and I started on the right and went left through my pieces. So probably not the most organized way to do it, but I had planned on kind of one piece per week working on. So I had the idea, since I had these representational iconic images of town, I thought it might be a good idea to have labels for some of them. So I had never worked in anything ceramic at all. And there's a wonderful business called Clayworks on Main Street in the historic district. And they were wonderful and worked with me. And I went down and created hand tiles, used my little stampers, to create these hand tiles. And they rushed to get them done for me because I didn't realize how long the process takes, and they had my back. So I had to prep a lot of materials. This picture on the right was freezing cold, and I had to cut down a wine glass that had the Little Mermaid on the front. There's a shop in town, and the voice of the Little Mermaid, I forget the actress's name, actually came to visit. So I wanted to make sure I got the gold writing from that wine glass. So I have all this posted on my social media, some more details if you want to see. And also, even though I asked for pieces to be fist size or smaller, I got this enormous, beautiful glass bowl with a crab on it. And I just smashed it with a hammer. I put it in a bag, turned it over and hit it. And it couldn't have turned out any better. And I got this beautiful bubbling that I put in the river piece. So before I actually started making the first piece, I laid out all 6 pieces and took the items that had significance, either in their story or in their shape, material, whatever, and divided them up among the 6 pieces because I didn't want to use everything in just one of the parts of the project. So these are just some pictures all over the floor of my studio for weeks. Oops, I went kind of quick on that one. Sorry. And I'll explain what those shapes are. So there's my finished tiles. I was very pleased with myself learning how to do those word tiles and totally hooked. I will go back. So this is a portion of the finished piece with that beautiful figurine in it. And here's the first piece. This is the river. This piece is about, it's actually right here. I don't know if you can see me too, but it's right here. And it is about 48 inches high and has a little bit of everything. A lot of these pieces were found alongside or in the river. There's a bobber that a family sent in that her husband and kids go fishing in the river. And so she included that here. Can you see my mouse as I'm pointing? Anyone?
I see it.
Yes. Anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. So here are the labels. I put down here the flour mill, and here's the Patapsco River. But it's really neat. I don't know if I can zoom in. Oh, I can. There's a necklace, which is a flattened spoon with rhinestones on it. I actually gave to a friend of mine as a gift. She lives in Texas now, sent it back for me to put it in the piece. So pretty cool. So the stories that came all around. Oh, I don't know how to go back. There we go. So my reference photos are on the right. That's part of the mill and the river, aerial view of the river. So there's a spoon embedded in the mill. So I was practicing my andamento, using all of this. The Laticrete was great. Everything stuck so far. This is the iconic Ellicott City clock and the B&O Railroad train sits next to the Railroad Museum. In the middle of this clock is a medallion from the county executive talking about the flood. So I just tried to put in pieces so they aren't really obvious, but kind of hidden. I use stained glass. I use vitreous glass. Oh, the one thing I wanted to use was one material throughout all 6 pieces. And what I came up with was mirror. So in the river, there are bits of mirror going down the windows of the train car. The outside of this middle row of the clock is black mirror, and then there are little tiny bits of mirror, but they're hard to photograph. This is the Patapsco Female Institute, which was a school for girls that sits way atop the hill above Main Street, and it's now used as an outdoor theater, the ruins of it. This is a courthouse that just actually stopped being used last year. A new one was built. The county executive gave me a large foundation stone that was once from the courthouse before this one was rebuilt. Unfortunately, that was one of those things that I could not cut. And so I came up with an alternate idea. I'll show you in the end. This is a view of Main Street going down the hill from a photo I took. This is the reference photo on the side. This is a Firehouse Museum, and the door I used, the EC 250 nonprofit organization gave me a post office box door. So I had to take the back off. It's really heavy, and I just used the bare minimum and used that as the door. But the windows up here, that's a reflection, that yellow, are mirror, and then there are little bits of mirror all throughout. The road is actually slate. This is some ceramic tile that people gave me, stone, more tile, ceramic tiles, and a broken teapot that I had to break, some other trinkets and medallions. And then this is the sign that graces both ends of town. And I did a bit of a realistic replica as I could with the different materials. This slab, I don't know if anybody ever visited Enchanted Forest when you were little, but the daughter of the people who built it gave me some slabs of anyway, it's a little theme park that was in Ellicott City, not in a historic district, that then got moved. So it was really special. Little trinkets buried throughout. I also used the black mirror here, but also put in little bits of regular mirror. And then this is the colored school restored that sits at the west end of town up on the hill. And this is a cabin that sits at the entrance of town as well. Iconic images. So this is stained glass for the roof, really textured stained glass for the roof and the doors, and more stained glass for the brown and the tan. Mirror for the windows. Someone donated a plate as their contribution. The entire plate was able to side the school. And then some of the other contributions, and these are just glass tiles. So I had to supplement a lot with my own materials. But it was fun trying to figure out how to recreate all the pieces. So this is the finished project. It's 90 inches overall by 60 inches high, the way I have it out, and that is how it'll be hung in the gallery. I mentioned that I have, turn this around so you can see. I have a lot of items that I couldn't put in, this being one of them. This is a granite foundation stone from the old courthouse, which was a wonderful idea. But I called a stonemason to have a price on cutting it because my wet saw was not going to cut that. It was $30 per cut. I'm like, sorry, can't use it. So found this great podium on Facebook Marketplace, and it has those shelves. So all of the items that were too heavy and big, like I have 3 railroad spikes from the Vienna Railroad Museum. Way too heavy, solid iron spikes or whatever they are. So they're just going to sit on the shelves. I'll have a QR code that goes to the PDF of the stories on top of the podium, and then also probably up on the wall explaining the project. So
that
any
is
questions?
so cool. It is so cool.
Thank you.
I have
So
a
are
question.
these things going to be just permanently hung up someplace in town?
That's the hope. So I was fortunate enough, I applied for a grant from the Maryland State Arts Council for a creativity grant and received some money for that. I'm also supported by the EC 250 just in getting the word out, and they're going to come and do a private viewing, artist talk, and reception in the gallery. It'll be on display here from April 16th through May 28th. And then I have no idea what's going to happen to it. So what I enjoyed about this project was meeting so many people and hearing, of course, the touching stories and using so many materials and trying to problem solve at every turn. What I learned is that if I had had more time or more experience, I would have found the site first and made it for site specific. So what my hopes are is that while it's on display and with the help of the Art Center here, in conjunction with the local government, that we find a permanent home for it so that these stories can be shared. One of the questions I have, and I have gotten the gamut of opinions, is, do I sell it? Do I donate it? What's the moral implications of collecting stuff and stories from other people and then selling it And, you know, how do you handle that after the grant I got a portion of the cost, but not the whole, you know, of the whole thing and my time creating it. So it's a big question mark now. I would love for it to have a permanent public home somewhere in Ellicott City.
How about the library?
The library, I have so many great ideas and a lot of wonderful people helping me. So hopefully by the May 28th, it'll at least have a second place to be shown. And if not a permanent home by then, so fingers crossed. Libraries are great, especially the one right in Ellicott City. It's not on Main Street, but it's nearby because it has a historical collection as well. But I figured if it gets permanently installed, I could just cut the screws off the back and have it installed that way, since it's on Ouija board. And most of it is outdoor appropriate. There might be some things that would fall off, but hopefully not for years and years.
What a great, what a great project. What a way to honor your town. And you must have really learned a lot about your town.
I really have, mostly about the people. We have a really diverse community. And one of the things that I would do better if I did it again, if I did it somewhere else, is to make sure that I got to more diverse communities. We have huge Korean population. Our town's actually dubbed Koreatown, and a very large Indian population, and also Latino. And my contributions don't reflect as diverse as our community is.
Well, that would be great to do. It's so great actually to have the opportunity to hear from people about their projects. And I'm such a sucker for a community project. This happened to be an excellent one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to talk about it.
Very
Lisa, you
inspiring.
really jumped right into this project after the Sama inspiration.
I totally did. It's so funny. It is so unlike me to just jump in and do something usually I research to death, but that's my whole Mosaic experience has been like that so far. I just do it, and then that's the beauty of it, right? It's the imperfect is just perfect in this medium.
It is.
How long do you think it took you from beginning to end?
That's a really good question. The actual composing of each piece.
Well, just from the idea, we started with the idea and then worked through contacting people, getting the elements.
I started in the week after Sama last year, and I'm not quite done. I realized I have to write up an introduction on my stories and write the list of people as my to-do list is going. So it's been a good 14 months, but I'd say the shortest piece of it all was probably composing each of the parts. You know, it took me on average a week full-time to work on each one.
Was it something you had to present to your local council or borough committee or to get approval?
No, because this is solely my project. And the same with Julie Sperling in hers. I remember her saying that, what am I going to do with this and people's stuff and stories? And it's a kind of a misconception with a lot of people, even my family, my husband, my son were like, I thought it was something you did for the town. I said, no, this is something I created. I took on this project of my own, so that I didn't have to get approval. Because I'm in the Arts Council building, I talked to the director and put my ideas to her, and she was like, great, go for it. And then along the way, she's helping me, and she's helping me promote it, or they are helping me promote it, so that hopefully it finds a public home.
Okay,
Cool.
thank-
But no, I don't know how Pennsylvania or Delaware operates for the rest of you, but the Maryland State Arts Council has creativity grants for individuals and organizations. And I probably took a week gathering information on how much I had to guess how much time it would take, how much the materials would cost, and submitted a proposal in June and got and was awarded a grant, which was a huge help.
Lisa, thank you so much for just
Sure.
sharing your process and that beautiful work. It's really
Thank you.
inspiring.